This is the I Read Comic Books podcast, the very best podcast for regular comic book fans. I'm your host, Mike Rapin, and joining me this week, a pair of pixies attempting to learn my true name for some sort of strange fae business. This week, I'm joined by Kate Lamphere.
I'm just going to ask your wife.
Yeah. And I'm also joined by Kara Szamborski.
Hey.
Thank you both for joining me this week. Sometimes I put the random intro without thinking, and I should have known with you two that it would have been a problem. So
a problem?
We are here to,
accurate. Kate and I are basically half fae. Do you know what books we read? Come on.
You're totally right. Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm here I don't really have a lot of announcements for this. Today is we were supposed to have a guest on this episode. She's going to be on the show in the near future. Looking forward to that. So today we're going to just talk about comic books between Kate, Kara, and I. And I am very much out of it, so I apologize in advance. So I'm just going to push it over to one of you. I have to ask the two legally mandated questions that I have for the show, which is how have you been? How have comic books been? Let's start with you, Kara.
Well, first of all, Loopy Mike is my favorite, so I'm delighted to be here on this show today. We were chatting before this. Is like Mike is tired. Kate and I are both like on the edge of a cold. Like it's fine. It's gravy.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's just living their best struggle life right now. It's so good. How am I? Well, I am enjoying my summer. I had a little vacation out to California to visit my friends in the Bay Area. It was a delight. I got to reconnect with some friends and places that were my existence pre-pandemic. So that was like a beautiful eat, pray, love moment. And also I bought some really fun nerd shit because I went shopping with one of my best enabler friends at the Disney store, and I walked out with the 25th anniversary Phantom Menace commemorative hoodie.
Wow.
No.
Yes.
I was expecting some Snow White shit. I was expecting like anything, but of course it's the Phantom Menace.
The Phantom Menace. There's like a little embroidered Darth Maul on the corner. It wasn't even on sale. I was just like, hell yeah, full price. Let's go, baby.
Hell yes.
And I wore it like every day of my trip because everyone I was staying with had too much air conditioning. So I was like, well, glad I bought this hoodie with Darth Maul and Obi-Wan Kenobi crossing lightsabers over a giant 25th anniversary thing.
I love it.
Also related to the Phantom Menace, because everything comes back to this now, apparently. I have been, as my like weekend morning cartoon fix, revisiting The Fairly Odd Parents on Nickelodeon on Paramount Plus, and it's everything. It's like I loved it when when it was on, and I love it now. Like the writing is really good, the references are great, everything about it is so good. And I'm currently in the middle of the Abracatastrophe movie in season 3, and it starts with like Timmy, the main character, in a dream sequence of like all these just slightly off IP settings. Like he starts out in Star Wars air quotes and then goes and is like Arachnakid / Spider-Man air quotes, and it's all very like meta, ends up in Jurassic Park. But the through line of all of this is like a character who's clearly supposed to be Jar Jar Binks shows up and is just like constantly like splattered in each single dream sequence. And it was like only a couple of years after Phantom Menace, and I'm like, damn, whoever animated this had some really deep feelings about Jar Jar Binks.
Wow.
Yeah. So
how much of that show is there? I'm very curious.
There's a lot. It went on. I probably watched like the first 4 or 5 seasons when they were airing, but there's many more than that. I think there's like 7 or 8 at least.
Okay.
I definitely remember seeing promo stuff at one point where it was like Cosmo and Wanda have a baby now, and I was like, well, I definitely never saw any of that. So yeah.
Okay. I mean, I watched that show too when I was younger. I feel like I fell off when I realized what MTV was, but that's beside the point.
I mean, one of the best days of my life television wise was when you know how like Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon would do like themed marathons of their shows. They would be like, oh, it's like the best possible example of this the best day was when they were like, all right, we're doing a Fairly Odd Parents marathon all day Saturday, and it's every single episode we've ever done about the Crimson Chin. So it was just
Oh,
like
yeah,
4 hours of Crimson Chin stuff.
Yes.
And like, you know, as somebody who loved superheroes, this was my total jam. Like,
Of course.
and Adam West as Catman coming in.
Mm-hmm.
So good. Anyway, I digress. So comic book wise, I was feeling a little annoyed with myself because I know that on this show we all like have our pretty well defined lanes. Like everyone knows Mike is the X guy. Kate reads a lot of whimsy. Like I'm the Archie person. Like we all like Renee's the manga, Paloma's manga with a more whimsical twist. Like there's just all these different, we know who's going to talk about what.
Right.
And I got really annoyed about that because I was like, I could talk about Donald Duck again. But I should also have range. So
Sure.
I realized that it has been years, if ever, that I've looked at Will Eisner's work. And I know he's one of the foundational people in American comic books. It is called the Eisner Awards for a reason.
Yeah.
But I've just never like gone back and said, let me just push up my non-existent post LASIK invisible glasses and like dig into this like important cornerstone of American comics history. So I was bopping around being like, I wonder if Hoopla's got any issues of the spirit on here. And that's when I discovered that Will Eisner was the primary illustrator of PS Magazine for the Army for 10 years between 20 years between 1951 and 1971. And like that's what he was doing between doing The Spirit and doing his later graphic novel work. And so there's all this writing about like, oh, and then like Will Eisner vanished from comics for a while. It's like he didn't. He was just pivoting to doing it in a different way. So instead of doing it for entertainment, he was doing it to like basically translate all these dry, technical, academic language filled army maintenance manuals and turning them into sequential comic books so that everybody reading them could understand like the basic preventative maintenance stuff that they were supposed to understand so that their equipment would run as it was supposed to. And I think we've talked on the show a bunch of times about like more recently published manga that like tells you how to do something. Like a few years ago, like I read the Marie Kondo manga that basically takes her book and is like, through the storyline of this girl in her apartment who needs to get her life together and find true love, she's going to clean everything and we're going to tell you how through storytelling.
Right.
So I don't know, I just kind of assumed it was a more recent thing, but nope. Will Eisner was using sequential storytelling to teach Army GIs how to properly load a truck in 1951. So the early issues of PS Magazine are all available online for free because they're like not copyrighted, but Abrams Comics did a really nice collected edition, which is the one that I found on Hoopla, which I really liked because they had some good contextual intro essays, one from Will Eisner's wife, one from a retired Army general, and one from a comic book artist. So it was like a really nice range of like personal story, the Army perspective, the comic creator perspective about this work and how it was, you know, a positive impact and how it was like really meaningful to Will Eisner because, you know, that he was working on this throughout the Vietnam War. And so his wife was saying that he didn't agree with the US being in Vietnam, but he felt that it was really important that these guys who were over there who didn't ask to be over there have the best possible information about like how to run their trucks so that they wouldn't like get in an accident that could have been preventable, stuff like that. So really interesting context setting. And I liked that the like intro essays had a lot of like opinionated editorializing, like very clearly saying like the early stuff, like the early 1950s stuff before he really got into a stride with it, is the good stuff, because he's still pulling from his visual storytelling that he was using with The Spirit, where the characters are drawn in like a really exaggerated, almost grotesque caricature style compared
Right.
to like the smoother superhero faces of the 50s. And like reading some of the earlier issues, I was like, yeah, this looks like Bob Montana for Archie. This is like, when you go back and look at some non-superhero comics from the 40s, you're like, this looks gross. But that was the aesthetic. That was the sense of humor. That was what people engaged with. And Eisner was being really intentional about using a style of art that the GIs would have recognized from what they were reading when they were a kid. So he was trying to keep that through line to engage them. So it's really, I'm not asking anyone to sit down and read like 200 pages of an army maintenance manual from 1950, but like, if you're interested in sequential storytelling as like a way to teach, it's actually like pretty cool material, because he uses like little gags and visual jokes, and he does some overlays with like, there's one early issue where you have to like troubleshoot what's wrong if your like truck engine isn't starting. So the characters take little like shrink me pills and are like climbing around on like photocopies of like a picture of the engine, and then these
Right.
like little dopey cartoons being like, put a wrench here, like check here, and you find out at the end of the story that there's nothing wrong with the truck. The guy was just trying to like steal the bumper off of it for his own truck that couldn't start, and like the instructor got carried away. So it's like really goofy and fun, and just if you like me want to take a minute to be like, I'm gonna be a comics history nerd, they're worth looking at. If not reading them extensively, like just taking a look at one or two and being like, huh, that's what Will Eisner was doing for 20 years.
Right. This, for some reason, I feel like Nick White needs to know about this immediately. This I feel like would blow his mind in terms of like a weird niche thing to like obsess over. So I'm definitely gonna send this over to him, because I think he'd be very, very excited about it. But wow, what a find, Kara.
Right?
This is crazy.
This is why you go digging for comics. This is how I found that weird NASCAR Christmas special that one time. Sometimes you just gotta like scroll and see what comes up.
I love it. I love it so much. Well, Kate, what about you? How have you been? What have you been reading? How have comic books been?
I've been good. I feel like I didn't read a lot of comic books in the middle of the summer. I mean, like we had that big break in July that we always take. And I feel like I've gotten back into comics in a really good way. I also have a comic book that teaches you something.
Ooh, we're all learning things today.
Yeah. This is called Little Monarchs, and the art and the writing, everything was done by Jonathan Case. And this is Aaron's addition to the Goodreads Reading Challenge this year, and it was a great suggestion, Aaron. Thank you. I actually really struggled to access this book though, because my library only had it in Libby, which is unusual. They don't have a lot of comics in Libby, the library app, and you have to select which program you want it to actually open in. And somehow I got it to open only in Kindle, and I couldn't change it. And I didn't like that experience at all. Like I had to like re-log into Kindle, and I was on an Android tablet, and it was a struggle, but but it was worth it. So part of this book is presented as like a journal written by a kid. Sometimes there are like normal comic book pages, and sometimes there are these like line pages like the journal, and they have like these cute illustrations, this kid's thoughts, and then they also have like scientific facts about monarchs, like the butterfly, and it's presented like it's her homework. So just like the structure of this book is really interesting in the way that like it breaks up the story, but the story itself is set in the future after the sun has like shifted, is what they say in the book, and people just like get radiation poisoning like immediately as soon as they step outside. So everybody who survived this like apocalypse lives underground, and there's not very many people, but of course an apocalypse has happened. There are like people that are just trying to survive. There are people that are like, cannibalism is mentioned a few times in passing. Like everybody's like kind of on edge.
Is this a kid's book, Kate?
It is written from the perspective of a child, and I think that it would be okay for a kid to read other than these mentions of cannibalism.
Sure.
Maybe parental advisory.
Here's the thing. Don't they make kids read Lord of the Flies?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
it's fine. It's fine.
Mike.
Yeah.
Whatever. Break them. I don't know.
So in Little Monarchs, there's a scientist who has like found her way. She's like holed up in this bunker with the kid and the kid's family, and that's pretty much everybody that's in this bunker. And the scientist like develops this temporary medicine and is working on a vaccine so people can be in the daylight. And so like these two characters are like the only people that you see in the daylight for a long time in this book. And the medicine is made from the scales of a monarch butterfly, thus Little Monarchs, and this doesn't kill the butterfly. Like this entire book, I was like, is this going to kill the butterflies? Like this book is kind of like a champion for like monarch restoration habitats and such. Like that's like kind of what's at the essence of this book, is to save the monarchs. And so I was like, this can't kill the butterflies though. Like, come on, Jonathan Cates. And this kid and the scientist travel around in their like really cool van/science lab.
Hell yeah.
And they're following these monarch migrations along the West Coast and a little bit inland. And they're also on the way to Mexico because this kid's parents left at one point to also follow the monarchs. And now they're trying to follow the parents. And so this entire story is like this scientific lesson of like actual monarch habitats and patterns and scientific facts and stuff. But then also it's kind of like there's just this like, do you hope that their parents are alive, or are you just going to set yourself up for heartbreak? But the book itself is really balanced well. Like you have these moments of wonder and hope, and then they're balanced by this like uncertainty and like tension, where there might be other people that might be like dangerous, or that they might not be able to find the monarchs, and these journal pages that are these kids' homework break up the story into these clean beats and also make it clear to the reader that there are certain things in these journal pages are facts and certain things in these journal pages are story or commentary or reflection, things like that.
So, Kate, at the end of this book, is there a happy ending? Is it a sad ending? I mean, it's about saving the butterflies. Obviously, the world is like in this apocalyptic state. I mean, how does the book end? I just got to know. You don't have to spoil the actual story, but like, does it leave you with a good feeling? Does it leave you with a bad feeling?
I am satisfied by the end of this book, and I think that everyone should read it.
Okay.
So.
That's not what I was expecting from your commentary.
Yeah.
Same.
Yeah.
Same.
It isn't like an emotional journey to read this book, but it's also like really good.
Okay.
Big feelings, not a light read.
Good to know.
Yeah, I also really liked like the art style, like being from the perspective of the kid most of the time. I feel like this art style was really appropriate. Like it kind of looked like it was done in almost like colored pencil or something. Like it had a little bit of this childish feel to it, but some of these things were like, I mean, like you're learning facts, and some of these conversations or some of these events that happen are like very real. But I think this art complemented all of the tones of the story, basically.
Well, that's great. I'm looking at the website that Kate posted, and one of the praise reviews is, for a post-apocalyptic survival struggle, Little Monarchs is nothing short of a romp, vibrant with a sense of exploration, adventure, and discovery.
I agree with that.
For a post-apocalyptic book. Okay.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
Nice.
Well, let me talk really quick about a book that I read. I sat down after, I don't know where I heard this. I don't listen to a lot of comic book media because it makes me frustrated. But someone out there recommended Dash Shaw's latest book, Blurry. This came out through New York Review, and I do want to shout out the folks over at like New York Comic Book Review, I think is what they're called. I think I'm getting that completely wrong, but regardless, somebody reached out to us, sent me a copy as well, which is very cool, but I had already bought a physical copy for myself because I was very excited to read this. It's this monster tome. It's 475 pages, and the story is just a nonstop sprawling tale of stories within stories within stories about like indecision and uncertainty, like hearing or seeing the inner thoughts of strangers and understanding that they too are like struggling to try to figure out things in life. I read this whole book in one sitting. It was a book that I couldn't stop reading because it doesn't have any real breakpoints. Like, you meet characters and then characters will start telling stories, and then they'll run into a character in that story, and then suddenly the perspective will start following that other character inside of the other person's story. And as that other story is going, they'll run into someone and it'll go into like another like person's mind, constantly reflecting on like other things that they're telling each other. Like, we meet a guy who's working in a kitchen, and he starts to tell a story about how he used to be used to be someone who like stands to get his portrait done or whatever, like a nude model. I guess that's the only way to describe it. And how he met this teacher, and then we find out more about this teacher, and then because of that we find out about this woman who the teacher knows, and because of that we find out about this author, and it like just keeps going and meandering. And throughout the book, we are constantly reflecting back up the path to the original stories. So like, at one point there'll just be a single panel of like the very top level story as like an indecision moment is happening. I really don't know how to properly explain this book without just, I have to like draw you a diagram almost to like get you to understand like the weird layers in which Shaw tells this story. Like, it's a very dreamlike like baton handoff structure that like forces you to readjust yourself over and over to change perspective, to be like, now we're not following that story we were just on, we are now in this other person's story. And every once in a while those other stories are going to pop up, but it feels like this crazy spectacular play on how I think like real conversations can go, right? Where like I'll be telling you a story, and then I'll be like, oh, but you don't know John, and John did this, and oh, but John was married to, Steve, and Steve blah blah blah. Like, you start to go down these weird paths. And I really just appreciate that Shaw just gave no shits about how like trying to recontextualize and just saying like, you have to roll with this. I could not imagine sitting down and trying to read this book in multiple sittings, because I would just lose so much context. I don't know, but the thing that really struck me about this book is there is kind of this kind of repeated question of like anxiety and indecision around like making the right choice, but not in like a hysterical way. Like, no one is spending pages and pages trying to decide what to do. They are simply telling stories about how they finally had to make a decision, and how that choice affected them for better or for worse. And I'm sure that like everybody struggles with this every day, like, from, do I get the right type of ice cream, when I'm at the Baskin Robbins, to like, do I change jobs because I'm just not satisfied with the work that I'm doing, right? Like, it's the whole gamut of things. And I every single choice is treated at the same level of like seriousness. Like, there is no comedic beat to like someone's paralyzation in their indecision. I don't know. I haven't read a book like this before, and it just blew me away. Like, Shaw never tries to paint anybody in any kind of specific light. Like, you are the person that forces the context and decision about like how you feel about a person in that moment. Like, Shaw does not do anything in the story to try to say, oh, this person's making a bad decision, or this person is a bad person or a good person. They are just people making decisions and living their lives. And I was just blown away by this book. Like, honestly, it was totally worth sitting down and spending almost 3 hours just reading these 4 to 6 panel pages that follow these people, this random array of human beings. It's incredible. It's an achievement of a book as far as I'm concerned. Like, the more I talk about it, the more impressed I am by this book. Because when I first read it, I was like, oh, 4 out of 5, it's pretty good. But then the more I think about it, I'm just like, no, this book actually is rules. Like, there is no other book like this out there that I can think of that doesn't try to like segment its storytelling. It is a continuous like through line without any pause. And I love that. I love that so much. Like, there are moments of like for breathing room, but at no point does Shaw try to say like, and that's the end of this story, we're moving on. It's like just a continuous through line where the first page starts with a character and the last pages end with those characters ish. So anyways, highly recommend this book. It's crazy. Dash Shaw has done some other books that I have not read that have gotten critical acclaim, but this is the first one I think I sat down and read, and I loved it. Absolutely freaking loved it.
I went down a language rabbit hole while you were talking about this, because I remember reading an article like years ago about like words in languages that aren't English that describe things that we don't have a word for in English. And like there is a word in another European language that I can't remember, and it's driving me crazy. That's like the realization that like other people are like living their lives around you. And then Google told me that there is an English word for it called Zander, which was made up 10 years ago on Tumblr. And then I had a minute of that's not what I'm looking for, but also all words are made up everywhere. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So you're describing a book about Zander or whatever the other word is that I just cannot remember, and Google's not helping me because now everybody English speaking is using Zander for this and not like just I don't know somebody, and it was like some like German or
it's probably Danish or Norwegian or
yes.
something. Yeah,
somebody from the Nordic countries weigh in, please.
But yeah, no, I don't know. This book is mind blowing. I really, really, really can't recommend it enough. But it is a huge book. It is literally like inches thick.
Oh wow. Okay.
But the art style is beautiful. I mean, like Dash Shaw's art is very simple. It's a very simple black and white book. And I don't know, his art style may not be for everybody, but I think it works very well. Like he clearly did a lot of work. He spends a lot of time in the book talking about negative space, which is a theme that I'm sure is just going over my head. Because there is that idea of like, we live our lives, but then there are the things between, right? And that is kind of like a piece that he hits on over and over. But yeah, it clearly has done a lot of work in like figure drawing and making sure that things look a certain way, especially because part of the book is about like figure painting and stuff like that. I don't know, like there was just like a lot of really cool stuff, and I don't have enough time here to sit down and analyze every single piece of it, but like clearly the guy knows what he's doing when it comes to like making really good comics, because this book, it was long, but at no point did I feel bored by it. Like I was constantly just like interested about every single thing, because the perspective switches so, I don't want to say frequently, but often enough that like by the time you could get bored with the story, you are on to something new, and then you have to try to recontextualize it with all that has happened before and try to figure out like where is the through line here. And the end kind of felt, I don't want to say anything about the end, but it is good. It is very, very good, and I highly recommend everybody go check this out. It's a huge tome, but it is totally worth reading.
Nice.
Yeah. So let's move on. Let's talk about comic books that we're looking forward to reading, because that's what we do here on this show. We read comics and then we look forward to reading comics. And if you haven't figured it out, boy, oh boy, it's been a lot of episodes. But that's what we're doing here. So let's talk about comics that are on the top of our pile, whether they're new, they're old, or just something you're trying to get off of your shelf. Let me kick things back over to you, Kara. What is on the top of your pile?
Can it really be the top of my pile, Mike, if it was on my list years ago and I forgot about it? I mean, then I rediscovered it.
We rearrange our piles every week, every day, you know, like something floats to the top. I get it.
This was part of I should look at my Amazon wish list, because I use my Amazon wish list to keep track of books that I want to read and then get out from the library or buy from somebody else, unless the price on Amazon is really, really good, because
smart
decisions. So I was scrolling back through it to be like, what did I put on here? I know I've put some comics on here that I have not read. And, you know, books are like wine. You collect them, and at some point you open them at the right time. So this is one of those moments, as we are still in, Mike already has it. Spoilers. Mike already has this book that is on the top of my pile. And you know how top of my pile it is? I reserved it from the library because the library has a copy. Yeah. I'm on my way. It's called The Girl from the Other Side. And I found this like on Amazon because I ended up in the like deluxe comic books section, and the deluxe version of this just looked really pretty, and I was like, am I going to impulse buy the deluxe version of a book I haven't read yet?
There's only four of them, so it's not a huge investment, is all I'm saying.
Listen, Mike.
It's not like I love this book with so much of my heart I can't even begin to describe it to you, but so I'm so hyped. I'm so hyped for this.
Okay, because I was going to say the only thing I know about this is what the cover looks like, and that part of the description says, this is the story of two people, one human, one inhuman, who linger in the hazy twilight that separate nights from day. No notes. I'm done. Sign me up. I'm reading that. Liminal spaces and dreamy fairy tale things that are dark but not scary. I'm in. And since, according to the Disney Corporation, it's already Halloween season, this is a nice summer to Halloween segue. I saw a try hard marketing email the other day that said it's October, August, October. It is
Boo.
October.
Boo.
So
I'll buy it.
It was a little right, like a little bit of a stretch, but also like, yeah, it's grotesquely hot, but I would like to start doing some spooky season stuff, and this feels like a nice like hazy summer to fall coziness transition aesthetically. The cover is like this tall, elegant looking, dark, goat-headed demon figure and this little girl, and it looks like this beautiful like early Tim Burton illustration sketchy style, but not as caricatured. Like it's definitely a manga. So I'm excited, and I'm extra excited now that Mike has waved his copy of the book in front of my digital face 3 times.
Do you want me to get the deluxe edition too? Because I own the single issue or single volumes, and I own all 4 deluxe editions, Kara.
Listen.
I'm telling you, this book
Yeah.
is one of my top tier best ever manga as far as I'm concerned. It is up there.
Okay.
And I have to thank our good friend April from back in our old Comixology days for recommending this book to me. But I'm obsessed. I love this series, and your description of it, having even not read it, is 100% on point. Like, that is exactly what it is. It's dark without being scary. And it's definitely a story that takes place in like late September. That's my head. That's all that it is. It's not quite Halloween, but it is fallish vibes, and it's still a little warm. Like that all tracks. I love that so much.
So it's like you do this, and then you do Over the Garden Wall, and then you get into Halloween.
Yes.
Look at this beautiful sequence of events I've laid out for everyone who's also excited about spooky season.
Exactly. We are planning out everyone's fall reading and watch list. So I'm so excited to hear what you think about this. Oh my goodness.
Could do a follow-up.
Let me shout out some of the folks hanging out with us live on Discord today. Paul G on the top of his pile is reading Replay, a memoir of an uprooted family by Jordan Mechner. Don't know what that is, but Paul, let us know. For me, though, this week, I am excited to sit down and finally read a volume of a series that I've been sitting on for forever. This is Damn Them All, Volume 1, written by Cy Spurrier, art by Charlie Adlard of Walking Dead fame, which I think is crazy because I can't think of many other comics that Charlie Adlard has done since Walking Dead. So that's really cool. Colors in this book by Sophie Dodgson, letters by Jim Campbell. This is Cy Spurrier and Charlie Adlard together on a book that feels like a smart knockoff of John Constantine. So I'm so in, because every Cy Spurrier book that I sit down, I pretty much love to like a certain degree, and usually that's, like middling or pretty high. So like I'm excited about this. Plus I know that Cy Spurrier's John Constantine is some of the best comics you could read, so very into that. But yeah, I've been sitting on this for a minute. I pre-ordered it from my comic book shop a while ago, and then it came home and just like fell into the back of one of my shelves, and I was cleaning up some of my comics of the day, and I realized that it was there. So now I pulled it out, it's sitting, it's ready to read. So I don't know really much more other than it's like magic stuff, and I like Charlie Adlard's art, so I'm excited to dig into this. Nothing more to say. Yeah.
It's been a minute since I've looked at a Charlie Adlard thing, but
I know. All I can think of is just like black and white. This book is actually in color.
Whoa.
Very exciting.
21st century, watch out.
Oh man. Kate, what about you? Why don't you wrap us up with what is on the top of your pile this week?
Yeah, so in order to tell you what's on the top of my pile, I have to tell you about a different book. So what's on the top of my pile is Rust Volume 2. And this is by Royden Lepp, who's the writer and the artist. And then they credited the Flatters, who are V. Shane and Joanna Estep, which was very nice to see. And I downloaded Volume 1 and read that for a vacation that I was taking where I wouldn't have Wi-Fi. And so I wanted to fill up my tablet, and I almost downloaded this entire series off of Hoopla, and then I was like, no, I should read more widely than that. What if I don't like Volume 1? That was a mistake. Volume 1 was great. I wanted it immediately, and now I have to wait until September in order to have more borrows. Volume 1, Volume 1 takes place on this struggling farm a couple of decades after a war that has ended, and during the war, these big robots had been manufactured in order to fight in the place of people. And now those robots are being repurposed for farm work, which is relevant to the story on the farm. And a seemingly young kid flies into the farm one day with a jetpack on, and he's being chased by this gigantic robot and like beaten by this robot when the robot can catch him. And the farmer helps this kid, and then the kid sticks around to help the farmer on the farm. And other than the fighting in the beginning of the book, most of the story is actually like kind of quiet, like not super action packed once you get over this fight. And it's the kind of like the unfolding of this backstory of the farmer's family and the building and it's building a mystery surrounding this kid. Like, where did this kid come from? Who is he? Why was this robot chasing him? And there's this feeling of antiquity that binds all of the elements of the story together. Like, the farm was inherited. This farmer is trying to keep it going. The machines that are left are all missing these rare parts, but the farmers are using them and need to keep them maintained to help on these farms. There's like a missing person that keeps being mentioned, and that person seems to like keep the rest of the family kind of held in this suspended sense of the past, like the history. There's really like the only forward movement that really happens is that this kid has been introduced to this family. But like, I don't know, it's beautiful in the way that it is like an antique. Like the art in this book is like clean, but it's also dusty and dry in feel, like in tone, like the farm would be in the summer. Like, I can almost hear cicadas. Like, I don't know if cicadas are
nice.
are where this farm would be, but like I can hear the cicadas in a dry day in the summer when I read this book. And of course, volume 1 ends on a cliffhanger. So,
of course,
it's like something is about to kick off.
September.
Yeah, like something is about to kick off in this story after you have this period of time where things are just like life is progressing, but nothing is really happening, and then suddenly something happens, and its story is over. So,
I mean, from your description, I'm sitting here thinking, sepia, steampunk, bucolic iron giant.
That's pretty accurate, really.
Yeah. Look at us describing visuals well.
We did it.
Yep. But this series is 4 volumes in total, and all of those volumes are in Hoopla. So September 1st.
I really think that Hoopla needs to like sponsor this podcast, because literally every show we're just like, go to your library. You don't have it? Tough.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Hoopla doesn't even have to like sponsor us, because you know what? They're like a public service, blah, blah, blah. They work with whatever, and maybe there's not a lot of money. They just need to give us like access to just their library. Just give us one access. That's all we want.
I want more than $10 a month.
We need to be able to borrow 50 books a person per month. It's not a lot to ask for, I promise. Paul G in chat is saying that is a very apt description, Kara. So nice. I think we've nailed it. But yeah, I think this is where we're going to wrap the show up here. Sorry, it's a little bit of a short one, but there's a big old post credits chat that we're going to talk about Deadpool and Wolverine. So if you're not a Patreon subscriber, I'm just telling you, get on the Patreon. $2 a month, you can get access to this. So I want to say thanks to Paul for proof listening to this episode. Thank you for everyone hanging out with us live on Discord. Next week's show is actually going to be me and Nick and Jesse Lonergan of Faster, of Man's Best. So many other different comic books is going to be on the show. Hedra. Did anyone read Hedra? Because Jesse's coming on the show. That's all I'm saying. So get ready for next week's episode. Thank you to Zander for editing. Thank you again, everybody, for recording today. Thank you, Kate and Kara. Until next time, comics are good, and so are you.